Welcome to Sketchnoting for Language Arts. Sketchnotes are a visual way to represent the literary elements you'll find in a text, like the theme, characters, symbolism, or figurative language. You don't have to be able to draw, you do have to try. Some tips for sketchnoting. Change up your letters. Write lots of different ways to represent different ideas. Anchor important words with boxes or little clouds. Underlining. Leave plenty of white space. Draw symbols to represent your ideas. Add in splashes of color to really highlight what's important. Most of all, take chances. I'm going to sketchnote an Emily Dickinson poem for you today called Hope is the Thing with Feathers. This was my first draft, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted, but I still took chances. Hope is the Thing with Feathers by Emily Dickinson. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chilliest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. So I'm going to start with the title of the poem. I'm kind of going to make that the title of my sketch note because it's easy and I don't really have to try to come up with anything catchy because the poem itself has a catchy enough title without me adding anything to it. And I told you to add color to emphasize. So I'm going to add in some color other than my regular pencil right here in the title. I'm also using two different styles of writing. I'm using kind of a scripty cursive lettering and then bold block letters just to separate the pieces of the title. And then I underlined to separate that from the rest of my text. This is where annotating in your text is really important. So going in and kind of noting different things as you read, because the annotating is going to make including items in your sketch note a lot easier. See, Emily Dickinson uses dashes instead of commas in her text to separate her ideas, and that is the thing that is unique to her style. That's not a standard thing. So I feel like that's worth including in my sketch note. And I'm going to put it in a box. You know what? I think I'm going to make it look like the box is being held up by nails because, I don't know, I just think it looks cool. And that idea is separate from the title. See how it's got its box and it's got its little extra decorations, and that is one way to denote that something is different or it's its own idea. She also uses rhyme and repetition a lot in her poetry and in her text, so I'm going to include that in my sketch note too. I like balance, so you know what? I'm going to put this in a box just like that other thing. And I'm going to give it its little nails. You don't have to do it this way. You can do it your own way. I just like balance when I'm doing sketch notes. So if I have two ideas that are similar, both of these are text features, I'm going to put them kind of together. She uses capital letters for emphasis in her poetry, which is pretty cool. It's also something that's unique to her poetry. So I think anything that's unique to her is worth including. Because not every author uses capital letters to emphasize. They use other stuff. One of the big things that we include in sketch notes are figurative language for poetry. And her biggest thing, a part of figurative language, at least in this poem, is this big extended metaphor. And if you don't know what an extended metaphor is, it's a metaphor that extends or goes through an entire poem. She uses this big extended metaphor that hope is like a bird. So I'm going to write extended, but I'm going to make it really big and make it take up a lot of space, because that kind of visually represents what an extended metaphor is. And then I'm going to write metaphor, and I'm going to kind of write it in the same style. I'm going to make it extend through the whole page. I like the way that looks, but I think I want to draw a symbol to represent hope as a bird underneath that. So I'm going to write over here what the metaphor was. Hope is a bird, because that's the extended metaphor. She compares hope to a bird through the whole poem. But because I want to draw a symbol underneath that, or I want to visually represent that underneath this, I kind of think I'm going to draw a feather. I want to make this black so that I can go back in with the pencil and draw a picture underneath it. So I'm just going to trace it. But I can go back and trace it because I laid it out with the pencil and made any changes that I wanted to with my pencil beforehand. So now I'm just tracing. And that is one way to make sure before you add anything permanent that you like how it turned out. So just kind of do it with a pencil and then trace it in with a marker. Oop, that got a little fuzzy. And maybe we want to add in our splash of color, because I really want to make sure that this extended metaphor stands out, because it is a huge part of this poem. So maybe that's where I'll add some color. And then we do add symbols and we do add pictures in to our sketch notes. But I said you didn't have to be able to draw to do sketchnoting. I am not a super artistic person, but I can kind of draw a feather. And that is easy, but it definitely visually represents the idea that hope is a bird, hope is the thing with feathers. I like the way that turned out. So she uses some other figurative language, and I want to make sure I include that in my sketch note. She uses personification. Again, this is where annotating comes in really handy, because if you've annotated your poem, you know the figurative language and you know all of the different things that are special and unique to it. So then you just have to come up with a way to represent them visually. And in personification, she says that hope never asks a crumb of her. And that is giving hope traits like a person. So that is personification. And that is worth including. Because not only does it give hope, not only is there that metaphor that hope is like a bird, hope is also personified. Hope sometimes does things that make it act like a person. She also uses hyperbole. And hyperbole is an exaggeration to make a point. And then she says that hope never stops at all. And we know that that is probably an exaggeration to make a point, and that is what hyperbole is. So we're going to include that in our sketch note. There are lots of other types of figurative language. There are similes, there are just regular metaphors. I didn't see any of those in this particular poem, so I'm not going to include those. I told you to leave a lot of white space, but I feel like this is too much white space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some things that just really stood out about the poem down here. She says that hope always sings. So we're going to add in some music notes. If you are taking a music class, you will probably see that these are not super great music notes. That's okay. You can tell what they are. And I can tell what they're supposed to be. So that's all we need. She said hope always sings. Hope makes it through. Hope keeps going. And you know what? I feel like that's a really cool thing that she was saying about hope weathering any storm. So I'm going to make a lightning bolt, Harry Potter style. There we go. Hope makes it through any storm. And the last thing that she really said was that hope was everywhere. And so I'm going to have a bubble or a little cloud that says that hope is everywhere. And each of these two, I had a little symbol that represented it. So I want to make sure I keep that kind of going through my sketch note. She said it's in the distant lands. And for some reason that makes me think of islands. So I'm going to draw a little island. She said that hope, made it through stormy seas. So I just drew an ocean and a little tree. And then she says that hope is deep in your soul. And it's okay to change up what you're doing. Oh, not is. This is why we do it in pencil. Deep in. Yeah. So I'm going to add in hope is deep in every soul and it keeps us going. Just because I feel like that's kind of the message of the poem. And then up here, I forgot, this is not my poem. This is Emily Dickinson's poem. So I'm going to put her name up here. And then I'm going to put my name down here. Because it's my sketch note.
Now it's your turn. Your teacher will have a list of exactly what is required to be included in your sketch notes. Please ask if you have any questions.